Hey, praise the Lord, guys. I'm Shaw Greenhorn. And Jesus said unto them, why trouble ye her? Let her alone. For she hath wrought a good work on me. For the poor and needy you have with you always. And whensoever you will, you may do them good. But me you have not always with you. For she hath done what she could. She hath come aforetime to anoint my body unto burial. And verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the world, this that she hath done shall be spoken of for a memorial unto her. Now Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went unto the chief priest to see how he might betray him. And when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. And from that time, he sought a convenient time to betray him. So here we have really a continuation of the woman with the alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious. We saw where he sat, he entered into the house of Simon the leper. And as he sat at meat, she came in and she just started, she broke it and she just, started anointing him. Now, no record of an introduction is made. It would make it seem as if she just came in and started anointing him. Maybe they had a conversation. Maybe she greeted him first, but no real introduction is given. She just came to do business, and it's like she was sent on a mission. So we saw where he was in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, and as he sat at meat, there came this woman with this alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious. She broke it and she began to pour it on his head. Now, there were some that sat with him that were indignant, saying, why was this waste of the ointment made? It might have been sold for much and given to the poor. And I pointed it out that we're in Mark right now. In Matthew, it was mentioned that it was Judas that said this, that was indignant and upset. So, if you pay attention, you'll see that, a lot of feelings are arising within Judas Iscariot right now. Because, this woman, she came and she did this. Now, him being the most outspoken one just against it, we see jealousy arising. It's really a mix of negative emotions, jealousy, envy, and plus, him being, a thief, because, it was testified that he, was a thief, and he was the one that kept the money back, and he would often steal from it. So I find it, almost, ironic and comical, because, he was saying, why wasn't this sold for much and given to the poor? So really, so that he could steal the money, really, what he was saying. And then right after this, he went to betray, Jesus for money. So, I say that, maybe, we didn't realize, but, they were actually messing with Judas' money. Were they not messing with his money? And, a man and his money, you don't play with that, right? So he sought to see how he could get it back. And what did he do? He went and he sold Jesus, essentially. He's like, I'm gonna get this money back some way. One way or the other, I'm getting it back. Because, he was so outspoken. He was so, dare you say to this woman, why didn't she sell this and come and give you the money so that you could keep it, so that you could really steal from it, But realize how this, pushed him over the edge. What we would see eventually is at the Last Supper, after he had washed the disciples' feet and did the communion, that the devil, he entered into Judas Iscariot. And Jesus said, is what thou doest, do quickly. And he left and went to go to the chief priests, and elders and scribes and all these guys to see how he might set him up. All right, so like I said, this is the continuation of yesterday's video. So we see here, Jesus, reframing the situation. Oftentimes, the disciples, they will, respond and react how they think one should react. But then, whether they were right or not, Jesus, he would step in and set all things straight. Where did we first see this? At least one time with the little children, when they brought him to that he might lay his hands on them. And the disciples, they rebuked them, thinking that, Jesus is above these little children. Or that he would be about business. He would be procedural. He would be like, how like a boss is at work. How, you can't be goofing off. You got to be focusing on the company issues. You got to be, doing the work that's been given to you, right? It's a serious environment. It's not time for little kids to be running through. They thought that it would be that kind of atmosphere. And, they really didn't know what to expect. But Jesus, he spoke up. He said, no, suffer the little children to come unto me and forbid them not, for of such is the kingdom of God. So, the same thing is happening here. They're, responding the best way that they think that they should. Because, Jesus, he's always about the poor and needy. And we know that rings out true. Judas the betrayer himself was the main one. He's like he was calling Jesus out, say, how are you always telling us, to give unto the poor and needy? But look at this waste. Look at how expensive. I can't even believe that something this expensive, that's so small, this oil, 300 pence was the price of it. I can't believe that, this is a thing of luxury. Some rich person is going to use this as maybe perfume or whatever. And, she just comes and breaks it like this. So they rebuked, in thinking that would be the right thing. So now here we see Jesus responding. This is his, suffer the little children to come unto me and forbid them not for this situation. So he says, let her alone. Why trouble you the woman? For she hath wrought a great work on me. Them seeing this as something negative. Jesus, he's so humble. He's always, rebuking the Pharisees and scribes for, focusing on the grandiosity of things, loving the best rooms at the feast, the upper rooms, the best seats in the synagogues. Even we just saw where he observed the rich man casting into the treasury and seeing how boastful and how throwing about their weight and bragging. Even if they weren't bragging with words, they were bragging with body language, and how he just rebuked them, saying that this poor widow that came in, she threw in 2 mites which make a farthing. And I say unto you that she had more than you, even though they put money. But the attitude, the spirit that they gave it with, they might as well have not given it. But she gave from her want. If we were to make a across the table comparison, they would be given like maybe 10 times what they put. They put what they know they could afford, even though it was still a great amount. But they weren't given, to the point where it hurts like how she was given. So let her alone. Why trouble her? If you go back and review the language that was used, they were very indignant. So they were getting ready to, they were even murmuring against her. But one could stop and think and ask the question: how could you guys be murmuring? She's here anointing Jesus, and you guys know the price of this. You know the value. You know the cost. You know what it's worth. Is not your master worthy of these things? They didn't stop to ask themselves that question. Is this a worthy thing to be done? They just automatically jump to the negative. And in life, even in society today, a lot of things will happen, and we'll respond like this. I see this as responding with the basic of human nature reaction. This is the base existence and mindset of a human being. The kind of mind where I do unto you before you do unto me. I don't really give to charity or help those in need, because why am I giving away my money? Nobody's giving me any money. This is the kind of mind where if I do something for you, I'm expecting you to do something for me. They have no charity. They have no bountifulness in their heart. This kind of reaction, I would say, is the base of human reaction. Them being so indignant, they didn't even stop to consider, could there be something positive from this? A lot of things in society, is like this. A lot of times, things happen, and people, they just jump and they just gang up. It's like the crabs in the bucket mentality. Because here we have a person going through something or something facing them, and instead of lifting the person up, they rather tear them down. And that's what they were doing to this lady. They were tearing her down, not seeing even the possibility. And I see this as walking with a very shameful mentality. People that are used to being shamed and then shaming others. Where's the exhorting? Where's the graceful words? Where's the lifting up? Where's the seeing the silver lining? Where's the deep connecting? Where's the deep reasoning? Where's the deep understanding? Where's the seeing the beauty in life? There's none of these things, being displayed right now with this kind of reaction, with this kind of heart, with this kind of mindset. So they were very indignant. So Jesus, he's stepping in right now. Why trouble you here? Leave her alone. You guys are murmuring, ganging up on her. I mean, it's so ironic that the same way the scribes and Pharisees are murmuring at me. When I do good, no, look at you guys murmuring at her because she, is doing good. You see, it's the principle that they fail to grasp. They fail to grasp the beauty, like I said, the beauty and the bountifulness, the abundance of life. They see everything as scarce, and we're running low, so we gotta pinch what we got. Basically they see life as we are running low, and we have to pinch what we got. Not understanding that Jesus, he just fed the multitudes, right? It was 5 loaves and 2 fishes. What if they were to look, at these loaves and fishes at that same way? It would never be multiplied. Because, we only have 5 left. We got to pinch this. This got to last. As a matter of fact, the little boy, he wouldn't have given it, because he would have said, this got to last me. There's 5,000 of you guys. If I give this, it's not going to fill anybody's belly. But if I keep it to myself, it can fill my belly. So bullying her, ganging up on her. Like I said, ironic that the scribes and Pharisees, they're always jumping on me, even though I do nothing but good. I raise the dead. How many people with leprosy have I healed? The sick of the palsy, being crippled and paralyzed, being blind or deaf or dumb, casting out devils. Yet still they find all this reason to jump on me. You guys are doing the same thing. The Bible says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Right now you guys are wrestling and against flesh and blood, which is doing a good thing. And you're overlooking, you're forgetting, you're not battling the principality. You're wrestling the flesh and blood while not battling the principality. You're doing the opposite of what he told you. So you're supposed to battle the principality, and you're supposed to give grace to the flesh and blood. Because the principality, you guys are failing, because the same thing that the scribes and Pharisees do to me, criticize and heavily want to clamp down on me, and I do nothing but good. And the same thing to this lady. And I often say that, the Bible does say that there's nothing new under the sun. Same thing as it was in the days of Noah, even so shall it be. But, the devil, he's not, he is stupid, but he's not, gone. He understands that he can't just present the same thing over and over. It's the same principle, but there's a change. What's the principle right here? Jumping down on somebody for doing something so good. It's the same principle, but it's just repackaged. So then, are you telling me that you can only see the good that I do? This is Jesus talking to them. Jesus would ask them, so then, can you only see the good that I do? Can you not see the good in others? You know that I am your master. I am the rabbi. I am the Messiah. I am the Christ. So you're ready. So no matter what I do, you would rationalize that, into good because of who I am. So then, it doesn't matter what other people do. You're going to rationalize what they do into bad just because they are not me. This is a heavy question I believe that could be asked to them in this moment. So, let her alone. Why trouble you, the woman? She had wrought a good work. You guys are overlooking the goodness of this situation. What a great honor. What a great honor for her to come and bestow something like this upon me. Do you look at the benefit? Do you look at the honor that this is to me? Are you saying that I am not worthy of honor? Are you saying that I am not worthy of something like this? And that's a fundamental thing that's wrong with human beings. And this is the basis of how religion is created, right? I tell you something and then you run away with it blindly and you apply it in all the wrong ways. You not only run away with it and over exaggerate it, and then you apply it in all the wrong ways. What was intended to be good is now binding people up, is creating strongholds, is frustrating people, is weighing and burdening them down. I told you, always be mindful of the poor and needy. Be not wasteful. Live humble. Live within your means. He said unto the soldiers then, be content with your wages. Of the tax collector, he said, exact of no man any more than you ought to. So now you guys are gonna clamp down on the wrong part of what I said. You're gonna, hyper exaggerate it, and then you're gonna shame. Then you're gonna create a burden on somebody. You're gonna weigh them down, make them feel shamed and embarrassed. This is the very basis of how religion is created. What was intended to do good and exhort. It's like you guys just search for only the worst parts of the way that this thing can be applied. And that's what you choose to run with. She had wrought a good work. Readjust yourself, readjust your eyes, readjust your mind. That's why he told Peter, when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. Because while walking with them, he know that they would never be converted in his time. It would only be after he left. For she had wrought a good work on me. This thing, it cost 300 pence. And not much about her is mentioned here, but if you backtrack to Matthew, I already did this from the point of view of Matthew. But, special care was given to the fact of what kind of sinner this woman was. And why is Jesus allowing her to even touch him? Now, she wasn't a rich person. And I think it might have been alluded to that she was even a prostitute. Do you know what she would have to go through to make this kind of money? It's nothing nice. And her in her want and her need, she brought this with such a cheerful heart. God said, I love a cheerful giver. He also said that the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to God. Even much more worse when they bring it with a wicked heart. But look at what this lady was doing. Look at the heart that she gave this with. Can you imagine how excited she was when she, got the money together and she walked in the place. I'm pretty sure that the kind of people that would, request this, they gave her a second look. Like she would ask for it by name and then they would look at her. And then, she would have to count out the money, in today's day and age, she would be walking in with like dollar bills and coins, trying to buy, trying to pay full price for something that was like, 20, 30,000 with dollar bills and coins. I can imagine how it was her paying for that and how they judged her and how they looked at her. Many of them maybe even knowing, because, if she was a prostitute, how many of them in that very place did, were her, customers, so to speak. Then he goes on to say, for the poor and needy, you have with you always. And whatsoever you will, you may do them good. But me, you have not with you always. So, him explaining this unto them, he has told them so many times that we go up to Jerusalem and the Son of Man shall be betrayed into the hands of sinners and they shall kill him and he shall rise again the third day. And every time he tells them, they are so sad. He tells them time after time, and it's like they're hearing it for the first time. They're so sad. One time, Peter even took him and started to rebuke him. No, Lord, this shall not happen to you. Jesus said, get thee hence, Satan. Thou savorest not the things that be of God, but the things that be of men. So the concept that he will not always be with them, it's hard for them to grasp. And I guess you can understand it from the point of, this is their Messiah. This is their, rabbi, their teacher, their leader. He sets the tone. He leads them everywhere. He's the one in charge of the healing, the deliverance, the miracles, and the gospel, the doctrine, the things that he said. It's all him. And, they're like a wolf pack right now. And, he's the alpha. And everything they need, he provides. So they really, if you think about it, they really didn't see an end of this coming. Some speakers will even say when he was riding in on a donkey, they thought that he would have just set up his kingdom right there and took control of the whole world. That's what they were looking for. So they were so not looking for him to not be there always. Every chance he gets, he's gotta break it down for them. So now he's saying, for the poor, you have with you always. Because when I leave, they will be with you. But I'm getting ready to leave. And there's a purpose for this. You guys are missing the purpose behind it. When he sent them out two by two, giving them power over unclean spirits to heal all manner of sickness and diseases, cast out devils. That was, their first, field trip. That was their first field trip by themselves to get ready. Because, the best learning comes not only with theory but with practice. So he filled them with theory and then he sent them out. He sent them out so that they could run into roadblocks, so that they could, attempt to walk on their own. So that when they would come back, they would pay more attention to everything he says. Things will have a different meaning, it will have a deeper meaning. They will be able to answer the odds, like, okay, so that's why, this wasn't working out, or, we should have been thinking this instead. The knowledge will be absorbed, so much greater. What he's saying here, the poor you have, with you always, but me you have not always with you. He's speaking right now of his departure. I mean, even right now, as he is there, but he's trying to tell them that there's gonna come a time where I won't be here. And that's the thing that they are missing again. It's so hard for them to grasp that he is about to be taken. You see it when during the crucifixion, none of them were there at the crucifixion. Only Matthew. They were depressed and in hiding. Being so fearful. Well, if they came for him, what if they start looking for us? They were actually on the run. So afraid. When he arose from the dead and he was walking with them, disguised, they didn't know it was him. He asked them, what manner of conversation is this that you have, one to another, that you walk and are so sad? Why are you guys so sad? Then they began to tell him about, have you been a stranger? Have you not heard of the slaying of Jesus of Nazareth, the prophet that was a prophet indeed, worthy in all aspects? And they were so sad. So what is, the takeaway for them right here is to understand that he's about to be taken, that he's not always going to be with them. And this is what she's doing, is to prepare him for his departure. When a person dies, then they get taken to the funeral home. They're drained of blood and, the body is prepared. This thing, it serves a purpose. You guys are, trying to take control, of something that you should just let be flowing. And, if you pay attention to a novice, the difference between a novice and an expert, whether it be a sport, whether it be academics, whether it be, singing or acting, whether it be in business, what's the difference between a novice and the expert? The novice, if you notice, they don't, first of all, they don't know what things mean, and it seems as if when they interject, when they interrupt, they always interrupt the wrong things, not having a meaning for what things mean, not having a frame of reference, not having the structure in their mind to be able to predict, and to observe the process along the way, even as it's unfolding right before their eyes. So the novice in them right now is causing them, first of all, to lash out, and they want to regain control of the situation. That's what you're seeing right here. They're trying to regain control of the situation. They think that things are out of whack. But the expert now, to use a simple example, this is so simple, you probably laugh at it, but, imagine a person in business, the expert would say, well, if we give away, like, if we order just the whole first batch of shipment and just give everything away, that would be such good word of mouth spread for, our business. People are going to try the products and see just how well it works. They themselves are going to want to come back. It's so good. They'll be more enthusiastic when they speak about it. They'll be more likely to go viral. But then what would the novice say? The novice said, well, we're just going into business. We can't afford to be giving away new stuff. You know how much these things cost. You know how much it's going to cost to reorder these things. We're going to be in the hole by so much. And, the difference between the novice and the expert, for she had wrought a good work unto me. What you're emphasizing is right. It's okay. Get the poor, yes to the poor and need, but that comes later. Right now, there's something that comes, before that. Him being the expert, telling them that, all right, yeah, that the poor and needy, that's great, but there's something that comes before that. That comes after this, what's about to happen next. Then it says, for she had done what she could, for she came aforetime to anoint my body unto burial. She had done what she could. I take this to mean, you ever been somewhere and an emergency arose. Let's use the example of somebody choking in a restaurant. But then, everybody's freaking out. But then one person, goes and does the Heimlich maneuver. She had done what she could. I take this to mean that, we have a wide open playing field. It's broad open. It's the whole world. Everybody's watching. Everybody's anticipating. We know he is, the Messiah. He's great with the people right now. He just keeps impressing them with everything he does, everything he says. But look what's about to happen. How many people can pick on in the spirit what's coming? How many people can be used of God to respond, to play such a important and pivotal role, as this woman is doing right now. The faith it must have taken for her to go and spend all this money, to buy this oil. And she did it with such a heart. She wasn't asking for anything in return. A lot of people, if there's nothing in it for me, then I'm not doing it. So she had done what she could. To whom much is given, much is expected, right? She had done what she could. You could use the parable of the talents. The first two were given, one was given 5 talents, the next one was given 3. They doubled what they were given. The next guy, he went and he was afraid. He dug and hid his Lord's money in the earth, being so afraid. The first two, they did what they could. I'm pretty sure that when they went out trading, a lot of the things they learned on the spot. A lot of things they learned on the spot, and they just went by faith. They went by faith, and they were surprised as the results came in. And they just went with a air of expectation and possibility, not knowing what was possible. And everything just opened up for them. But the last one, the one that was given 1, he went with fear, not seeing the possibility, but seeing only failure. So they did what they could. And so did she right here. For she had anointed my body unto burial, beforehand. This is to let you know, like I said, it's when people die, then they get anointed to be buried. We know the Egyptians are probably the most famous for embalming people. When nobody was ever, prepared before they died. Is Jesus the only one that ever got anointed, before he died? So then he says, verily I say unto you, whatsoever this gospel and preaching to the entire world, this that she had done shall be spoken of for a memorial unto her. Now verily I say unto you, and that's Jesus. The moments that he says, verily I say unto you, is always an emotionally charged moment for him. If you go back and look, every time he said it, it's always something happening that, we know that he doesn't swear and he can't swear. For he himself said, thou shalt not forswear thyself. Swear not at all, not by heaven, for it is God's throne, not by the earth, for it is his footstool, not by the Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king, not by your own head, because you cannot make one here, not black nor white. But when he says, verily I say unto you, that's the closest, he has ever come to swearing. Verily I say unto you, is a heaven and earth may pass away before my word passes away, kind of a moment. Even though this applies to all of his words, but the emotional charge that he gets in these moments when he says, verily I say unto you. Why is he saying, verily I say unto you? Because look at the heart of everyone in this room. Nobody is for what this lady is doing right now. Everybody's against her. They're murmuring. You ever heard the saying that one fool makes many? In my country, we have a saying, one fool makes many. Because, one person responded and then there was nobody else to challenge what they were thinking. It was just like, now I'm always saying it's good to have your own mind, have your own principle for why you do and believe things. And don't be a bandwagonist. Don't jump at what people, the scribes and Pharisees, the chief priests and elders, they're about to get themselves in so much trouble, with this whole crucifixion. Because, one person decided that this was no good. And now we all got to follow them. Nobody has a mind or a mouth to speak for themselves. So this verily I say unto you is looking at this whole room. Look at how everybody is against this lady. And look at the good that she's doing. And look at all you guys. Look at all you guys. Look at how you are against her. Even murmuring, even gossiping. Verily I say unto you is a testimony against them. When the 2 men went up in the temple to pray, the one the Pharisee and the one the sinner, the Pharisee prayed, God, I thank you I'm not like other men, like this sinner right here. I tithe, I fast, I do this and I do that, and all these things he listed. The sinner man, he humbled himself, saying, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. It was a sinner man that was justified. So you, Mr. Pharisee, with all these things that you do, even being in control of the matters of the law, you were temporarily rejected right now in this moment, and your place was given to this humble sinner. So with this, verily I say unto you right now, their places, they're being temporarily rejected. They'll be accepted. Give him like 20, 30 minutes. Give him like an hour, and they'll be received again. But right now, you're being temporarily rejected. With this, verily I say unto you. Whatsoever she had, wheresoever this gospel is preached, this shall be told for a memorial. You're seeing it as something bad. This is honorable. For as she has honored me, so will I honor her. He even, it's not in this, it's in Matthew, the same, because, the same stories are repeated in the gospel, but they're told from a different perspective and they emphasize different things. If you go to Matthew and look at this very story, you'll see how he spoke to Simon Peter. He said, Simon, I came into your house. You gave me no kiss. Look at this lady. She had not stopped kissing my feet. You gave me no water to wash. She had washed, my feet with her tears and dried it with her hair. If I was to start pointing out the real true things that matter, if I were to mention the things that matter, you would see right now that you do not compare. You do not match up to what she is right now. So, just humble yourself. This moment pass, and then we can continue with everything we need to be doing. And in life, don't you notice that it's always the people that are gossiping, that they are the real fools. You ever notice that? Wherever you see a bunch of people gossiping, If you were to get to the heart of the matter, you usually find that they are the fools. Is it not always like that? You find that things that they're gossiping about, that if they're not a worse offender in this very thing, that the other things that they offend in is so much worse. Actually, here we see a shifting of the story where it says, then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went unto the chief priest that he might betray him. So, like I said, Judas, he just observed this whole thing. And this lesson went completely over his head, right? How are you going to look at this woman anointing Jesus' body for burial? How are you going to listen to his explanation that he just gave? And this is what you come up with. I say that they touched Judas' money. Judas was so upset. How come he didn't sell this and come and give me the money? So he went on to the chief priest. And it's funny how this thing, it lines up so perfectly, because, we just saw the beginning of the chapter where it said, and after 2 days was the feast of unleavened bread and the feast of Passover. Now the chief priests and scribes sought how they might take him by craft, put him to death. But they said, not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar of the people. So they sought to take him by craft, and they were looking for an opportunity. And look, this just fell into their laps. It just shows you that, there was a deeper mastermind behind the scenes in all these things. That is how they could have said, give us Barabbas. These very people who he just healed, he just delivered, he just brought their children back from the dead, cast out their devils. How could these people now be saying, give us Barabbas and crucify this man? It's because there was a deeper, mastermind behind the scenes, pulling all the strings and coordinating all these things. That's how they literally just said, all right, so let's find a way to take him by craft. And now here Judas coming onto them. It's like somebody answering their own prayer. So after having observed all these things, Judas, he took it upon himself now to go and betray him. At the Last Supper, where it said, the devil having already put it in the heart of Judas Iscariot to betray him. Right? So then the last one says, and when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. And from that time, he saw the opportunity to betray him. So when they heard this, they were glad. Why are they glad? First of all, we just saw them being afraid to put him to death, because we know there's going to be an uproar. So you see how we're going to touch him. We're going to have to be careful at how we do it. So now we're going to the drawing board and we're going to figure out the most elaborate plan that we can come up with. But then look at this, this silver lining for them. Here comes his own disciple. How can the people be angry at us? His own disciple wants to put him to death. So when they saw this, they were happy. You can imagine, being happy to put Jesus to death. For which of his miracles are you happy? You know why they're happy? They want to get him out the way, so things can go back to the very thing that he was trying to pull them out of. The very thing that's causing all of their generations to end up in that place of torment. That place of torment where their father probably is right now. His father is, and then his father, he's there, and then his father before him. All the generations are out there waiting on them. He's trying to pull you out of this place, and all you want to do is go back. So when they heard this, they were happy. What a sigh of relief! What a sigh of relief! All right, so now we have the angle that we're gonna play. We was here scratching our heads because everybody that we sent out, he dealt with them. He lawful to pay tribute unto Caesar. Show me the penny. Whose image is this? Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar. Whose wife shall she be of the 7 in the resurrection? Because they all had her. In the resurrection, they neither married nor given in marriage. Everything that they sent, he had an answer for them. And he answered them in a way that made them look stupid. Really. So now, being so relieved. Alright, because everything we come up with is not working. Now let's hear what you have to say, Judas. So they promised to give him money. Because that's what he wants. So he's making his money back, right? I want to know, what's the difference between this 300 pence and the 30 pieces of silver that they paid him? Which one is more? What's the difference? Because it's obviously this 300 pence, the perfume, the oil that triggered him. So now, here he's about to get 30 pieces of silver. And he sought, and from that time, he sought for a convenient time to betray him. How many people are walking with people that are seeking a convenient time to betray them? How many people are walking with people that are envious of their blessing, envious of their success, envious of their marriage, their children, their business, their career? They are envious of the fame that they have in the social circle, of the resources that they have at their disposal, the family name they came from. How many people are walking with people that are envious, seeking an opportunity to betray them? Once you identify a snake, you never ever walk with that snake again. I say the human mind is so powerful. See, once you ask it a question, it's gonna search non-stop till it gives you an answer. Once you ask your own mind a question, it searches. You might not get it that day, you might not get it that week, not even that month. You might get an answer to something years later. It just comes to you. Why? Because you ask your mind that question. And if you ever find out or realize or observe that a person, they have this question, how they might destroy you or how they might, sabotage you in some way. You never ever want to walk with that person, because now they're collecting the bricks that they find to use it to build your gallows to hang you on. I mean, if you're lucky, you'll see the false alarm. You'll see the moment where they thought they got you, but then they'll see that, well, they didn't devise the plan all the way through enough, and there was gaps and holes in there, and you managed to get out of it. You see, when you see in that moment, that's it, that's it. Anything that happens after that is on you, because here Judas he's gonna walk with Jesus, and he's gonna be observing him now. He's gonna, I guarantee you, every place they entered, he was looking around. All right, so is this a good place? If this was to be the place, how would I bring them in? How would I set him up to fall? What do I need to put in motion? What do I need to say? Where do I need to position him? He's asking all these questions. I am Straw Greenhorn.